All right.
Our microphone's on here. Let's do a quick sound check. For those of you who are online, I think you should be seeing us here pretty shortly. Let's just do a quick little sound check. Can you hear me? Say yes. If you can hear Tommy. Tommy, give me a little hello there.
Hello.
All right, we'll see if it looks like the audio's coming through on our side. And hopefully the video isn't too distorted for Tommy. There we go. It's a little bit squared out here. Let's get it fixed here. There we go. You were a little bit stretched out there for a second. We got just.
Oh, that's fine.
Now you're back in proportion.
It's encouragement to lose some more weight. So.
That's hilarious. Yeah, this camera takes off 15 pounds. It's amazing.
You put a pen on me.
Well, for those of you who have joined online, thank you very much for joining. My name is Mike Carlo, one of the owners of PowerBI.Tips. With me, I have another MVP who's awesome in the Power BI space. Tommy is from Chicago, and I'll let Tommy get us a full intro here. But I want to introduce Tommy to the team, and we're so excited to have you here and do just some fun talking about Power BI and governing and getting reports out into the hands of users and driving some more adoption. All right, Tommy, take it away, buddy.
All right, thank you so much, Mike. And Mike and Seth, thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here to join you guys tonight. The Yankees got canceled tonight, so I figured it was a perfect night to kind of dive into what it means to build a program to adopt, govern, and promote Power BI in an organization. So really, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Kind of twofold. It's really talking about what does it mean in terms of what does it look like to build a Power BI adoption framework. How do you get from people building reports to people some occasionally using reports to actually organization teams and departments relying on your data, relying on dashboards, trusting the data, asking for more, and using it to deliver actions and making data-driven decisions. And the other part of that, we're going to kind of go through what that actually looks like outside of just the theory of what it should be, but what are the components of that? What are the pillars that build up adoption, trust, and overall governance of Power BI at an enterprise, small business, or just a general organizational scale? So first, just a little about me. Like Mike said, my name is Tommy Puglia. I am in Chicago. I help lead the Chicago Power BI user group, a Microsoft MVP. Currently, I am at CompTIA, kind of doing the same thing, really working. How do you deliver Power BI? Not just the reporting, not just the visuals, but the trust, the knowledge, and the education to a user base. I think a lot of times we're so used to working in Power BI, so we know the numbers, we know what the visuals are, we know the colors, and we know the data set that's behind it and what filters are used behind it. But then when it actually goes out into the wild and when we publish it, do we know what the users are seeing? Do we know if they're comprehending the same thing we are? And I'm very passionate about that because I think that's kind of the biggest gap right now in terms of Power BI education and training. There's a lot of I think you're seeing now Power BI have kind of two different skill sets. You have the hard skills, DAX, data viz theory, data modeling. But the soft skills of Power BI are, if not more important, or at least equally important, and that's the training, educating, the story and the navigation, allowing people to understand where content is, what content to use, and allowing them to be empowered by your data. So let's talk about this framework, and basically we're going to call it our Power BI or Business Intelligence Framework model, and we're going to go over a few things that basically, the very foundation, the pillars of it, and then go through like the actual components of an adoption strategy. And this adoption strategy is regardless if you are in the very beginning of adopting Power BI, your CIO just purchased Power BI, or your company's been using Power BI for 5+ years. As Seth said, that now you can actually put, I have 5+ years of experience in Power BI. I thought that was the best joke I've heard all year.
Which is great, because every resume has it.
Yeah, you're like, I guess. I mean, does DAX and Excel count? I'll put it because it feels like five. So no, and yeah, Seth, that was the best joke, and there's been need for jokes in
Yes.
2020. So, but whether or not your company's been using it for a long time, or you're just starting, or anywhere in between, how do you kind of ramp up the for people to rely and consume data at a company? Then we're going to look at some actual concrete examples, what a roadmap would look like for teams or departments, and talk about the governance and process. All right, so let's talk about a foundation. And really what we're going to talk about here is a maturity model. And again, beginning to assess, okay, we want to get here, but where are we currently? And that really starts with the first thing of having a statement for your BI team. It could be just you as the business intelligence manager, and you're the only one who does Power BI. There's a lot of cases where there's a BI team, there's an internal team that delivers data and reports out to the company, or each department has teams. Those people, whoever those people are, kind of getting a maturity statement of what the goal is for Power BI, what the goal is for data at the company. How do you want people to consume it? Why should they view a dashboard or report? What are they supposed to get out of it? And that maturity statement should really kind of equal, like, we want people to make data decisions, drive different, alter behavior than they normally would had they not had the dashboard. And then begin to actually create measurable goals. We create goals for all the different departments. Everyone does KPI. So should the BI team. So should the people delivering and publishing Power BI dashboards and reports. And part of that too is also the documentation. We're gonna wear a lot of hats today. You thought your job was just business intelligence or business analyst. We're about to get a lot more hats you can put on your resume. I would not put these on your resume, but these are absolutely job skills. And one of them is documentation. Beginning to write down what are the standards and the process being used at your company. So let's talk then about this adoption strategy, and there are going to be three main components of this. So when we talk about adoption strategy, again, this is regardless of where you are at your company. It could be in the very beginning of delivering Power BI, or it can be a well-oiled machine at your company. This is something we do that can be done on a cyclical basis, on a yearly basis, or even a biannual basis. And it basically goes through three segments. And basically what we call them: discovery, feedback, revamping, and standardization, and rollout and support. So this first part that I really want to focus on is this discovery. And that's beginning to understand, where are the teams at? Where are your departments at? How are they consuming data? How is data making a difference in their organization and on their teams for the members of that department? One of the things I would highly recommend is to begin to meet with them. So the other hat we're going to wear now is we're going to become a journalist, and is beginning to write down a few pointed questions about how that team actually consumes and makes decisions off of data. One of the things that you should always start with is, what is the current state of reporting for your department? What reports are they currently using? Are they using things outside of the BI team? And this is a very common thing where we use your reports, your dashboards are great. We also have Zoho. We also have an Excel macro VBA that we've used for 20 years, and we don't see any reason not using it. Beginning to understand, where is the data coming from that they're making decisions? Why would this be important for you? Number one, trust in the data. The goal is that you keep a standard in terms of, they know when they're looking at a report or a dashboard or a number, they know that number is correct. They know that number in context of the different parts, the filters, the teams, the reps, the regions, if you're talking about a sales team, that they can look at this, say, I know this is that number for this year, for this region. Not necessarily taking that like, okay, this number is great, but we need to go back to our Excel sheet to validate it. The goal is that there's a central location for users to consume data that they can use, act upon, meet upon, and begin to analyze and ask more questions. Talk about that current state. What are the hurdles? What are the things that bring distrust or brings concerns to them when they're actually looking at your reports that doesn't really allow them to make decisions off of it. Part of that then is going to what is the desired state. If you had 20 BI reps working for you, and we had an unlimited budget, what would your lookout from a year from now look like that would be successful? Why would you be high-fiving the sales team because you delivered such good content and such good data? What would that be? Would it be a predictive model? Would it be having quota, target to quota in a report? Would it be real time? What are the things that would make that particular department, team, however your organization is structured, that would make them rely and make better decisions? And again, you can do this for all different teams. Then it goes into really this documentation and identifying a delivery project. And we're going to go through what a roadmap would look like. But it's basically going through, okay, we've had conversations about where you're getting data, the process that you get data, and really what you're looking for. Here's our roadmap for you. Here's what we're going to do in the next short term or quick wins, the next 2 months, the next 5 months, the next 9 months. Getting them to sign off to align expectations. Again, a lot of the discrepancy that comes from people not trusting the data or really not relying on it is the expectations of what the BI team can deliver and what a report can do. So basically, before you even open any Power BI file and open any SQL connection or Excel connection, writing a roadmap for the next 6 months and getting that team to at least sign off of it and say, yes, this is what we're hoping for, this is what we can do, and allowing them to contribute, allowing the teams to actually have a voice in this, because again, this is going to be for them. Our job is more or less, we're not doing reporting just for ourselves. Some of us may put together baseball bets and over-unders and try to put a predictive model, but that may be some of us, not all of us, not that I know anyone who does that, or if I do that myself. But most of the time, our goal and our purpose is support. Really, we're in the support and service business. We're not necessarily in the business intelligence business. So our goal is to deliver something for others. So making sure that they have a voice in that, and they also have that expectation of what you're going to deliver. And then there's a process for the report development in terms of building out reports, allowing department holders to have a large part in that. So that's the first, you can call it, pillar of adoption strategy here. And then what we're going to talk about next is beginning to look at a team inside and say, what does the BI team actually do? Again, it could be just you. It could be teams in each department, but what is the process? So one of the large things is aligning expectations in what the BI team does. And so let's talk about what that means. So first, does everyone follow the same process for building reports? Is it you, Joe, and Mike who are building reports? Do you follow the same template? Do you follow the same connections? If you're using particular metrics that are very important in your organization, are they all using the same formulas with the same filters? Layouts. Are the layouts being used, the same colors being used from an organizational point of view is absolutely huge. And again, also, what is kind of doing your spring cleaning on what content is out there? What are people looking at? I've seen examples where there's a Wild West where you tried, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, where you look at a report, go, okay, who made this? And this is before Power BI had some of the lineage, but it's like, okay, so this is an app that was made by someone who's no longer here. So how do we delete this app, or I guess this, what was it called before an app?
I think it's been pretty much an app the whole time.
Content pack.
Oh, content pack, yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, by the way, introducing Seth. Michael had some technical difficulties on the call, so Seth is now joining in halfway through the presentation. I'm so sorry, Seth. We'll get a video in here shortly, but welcome, Seth. And sorry, Tommy, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Thanks.
Totally fine. It's good to see Seth. So,
It's me.
Great as always.
Sorry, I totally took you off track. Content pack was what it was originally, and now they've moved into apps.
Yes,
there you
content go. Content pack. So we had an example where a content pack was made by someone who was not on the BI team, but they found a way to make it. but it was used through the sales team, but we couldn't delete it because no one had admin rights. That person left. I'm sure that's a familiar situation that you've had, or someone created a report and they left. So what is the content in your organization? Where is it located? So this is going through your spring cleaning of, is our content organized? Part of this too is identifying reports and do they have a purpose? If you have 3 reports that serve the same purpose, two of them have no reason to be out there. Again, the goal is to consolidate. The goal is to organize, not just for yourself, but for the users who are navigating this content online. If they had 25 different dashboards and 12 of them were similar, how would they know which one to get to? How would they know which one is the right one for them to actually look at, consume, and act on? Part of this is also the naming conventions. Is this something you've ever thought about? I'm sure you've done this with your columns and your tables and your DAX measures, but do you have a nomenclature or a naming convention for your dashboards? Again, think about this from the user point of view. If they're going to Power BI, and they don't go into Power BI every day, they might do it twice a week or weekly, and you say there's a new report out there, and they look and they have 50 dashboards shared with them, and there's no logical organization or no logical naming convention, how are they going to know what's correct? So this is going through and understanding what is the process, what are we doing, what is the BI team or the report authors doing on our end to make it easier, or are we making it harder for the consumers out there? And this is beginning to write down, okay, we need a naming convention. So anything, a quick example, if you're creating a marketing report with a dashboard, the dashboard name starts with MKT dash, and then the dashboard name. If you're doing something for finance, it's FIN dash. Finance dashboard name. So one, it makes it easier for the users to understand what content they're looking at, that, okay, this is for marketing, so that's not relevant for me. Okay, this is for product management, that's relevant for me. And again, also consolidating the content to make sure that, okay, this one's for product research. There's only one for product research. This is probably the one that I need to look at right now. And also change management. How do people request excuse me, how are reports requested, developed? Just because someone requests a report does not mean that it deserves to exist. Is another point that can be a shock for everyone, because usually we're in the mode of, you need something, yeah, I can do it, yeah, just tell me what you need and we'll do it, and it comes out and it publishes, and now you have 50 reports out there that nobody looks at.
That's so true, though. I want to emphasize that point, because Power BI makes it so easy, but it's also so complicated. To just, you whip out the report and there's no process given to it, and now you start running into like Power BI report hell, like you would Excel hell, would just keep emailing reports around. So that's a super good point.
It's almost like as easy as cluttering your desktop. So yeah, it's the same thing. And then you realize that's on a Monday morning going, oh my gosh,
there's so much crap here. What am I doing?
Then you create 20 folders called archive, and then you realize that you are far behind. But think about that experience for you, but think about that for a consumer. Again, and this goes back to how are dashboards or reports being created? Do they have a purpose? If someone requests, like, let's say, I need a product research R&D report. Hey, we have something out there. Does this meet your needs? If not, can we build upon this? Getting managers involved, so there's actually an approval process. One, it also saves us time. So the report authors are only working on things that are meaningful, that make an impact in the business. Again, that is our job. Our job is to support the other teams, support the company to make a meaningful impact through data, not just to appease to make others happy and to make things easier for others. Our job is to support and help make an impact for others in a meaningful way. So we talked about looking at the different departments or the different teams at your company and what are they doing, what do they need. Then it goes into what is our BI process and what can we do to make create a little more standards so we create the same process for reports. I want to challenge you guys. Do you have metrics at your company that I consider they're called universal KPIs. And these are the KPIs that kind of scope across the entire organization. These are the money numbers, so to speak. Is there a process if those are on a report to validate them? The worst thing you can do in our industry is lose trust in a consumer, because losing trust in a team, department, or a company is the hardest thing to gain back. It's the hardest thing to gain back, so people actually start relying on your numbers. If there's not a good process in place, you'll find a lot of times where there's a leadership meeting or a board meeting or marketing and sales or meeting, and they say, hey, we had 1,200 leads this month. We need more. It's like, well, I see that we had 1,500 leads, so you have enough. Where's your number coming from? Where's your number coming from? And that discrepancy, that lack of trust, even if there's a reason the numbers are different, again, context is key. That discrepancy ruins everything you could build or everything you can try to do. So that standardization, understanding what's important, what people are looking at, and what metrics need to be validated under what context is absolutely huge. Finally, on the adoption strategy, and again, this can kind of go per department or per team, is once there's some documentation in place, once there's a standard, creating standards and process in place, it's the actual rollout and support. Again, it's one of those, if a report's published in Power BI, does anyone view it? How do you promote your reports? So one of the big things is that we do with our BI team at CompTIA is any report that's going to be viewed by, let's say, 25 or more people. We do a roadshow, a virtual one now as everything, but we basically do a webinar that anyone could join that's going to have access to that report that basically go through, hey, here's what's new with the BI team. Here's some new features in Power BI. Did you know there's a button now you can drill through? It saves everyone time. And now let's go through the report. What does a report do? What does it accomplish? How do you navigate the report? And then recording that, putting it in our center of excellence in the SharePoint site for BI. So allowing others to be empowered by the reports and understand what the report's supposed to do. So at this point, Mike, are there any questions at this point? Can we move on to actually what a roadmap would look like?
So not a lot of questions yet at this point. I can't tell you how much I resonate with what you're saying. I've seen it. I'm in organizations now that have those kind of problems. It's very hard to drive a culture of change and start putting some rigor around your reporting. It's kind of stuff that should have been there all along, but now that we're giving a lot more tools to the business side directly in their hands, it really changes things, I think, quite a lot fairly quickly here. So no further questions. I think we're good to keep cruising.
Awesome. So again, I just want to kind of highlight again those three aspects of any team or department or organization: discovery, finding out what a department is looking at and what's important to them; standardization, what is a process currently in place, and making sure the processes are standard throughout every report being published; and then rollout and education, and allowing users to be educated by the Power BI, and also allowing them to get support from you in case they need a one-on-one training. So let's take this idea and especially highlight what we talked about with the roadmap. So you get a team, a department, maybe we'll call marketing. You're finding out what they're doing. You're finding out what they need. What do you do now? What does a roadmap actually look like? So let's kind of go into that. So a roadmap for a department or a team or an organization, again, depending on the scope of your company or what you're dealing with, you could basically put together this 5-point project plan. And basically it would go through that scoping and discovery. And we're looking on the left side at this point. So again, these interviews, and then putting together after the scoping, after understanding who's involved, identifying, and something I failed to mention is it's very important to identify 2 types of people per team or department that you're doing this roadmap with. One is a stakeholder. This is someone who has the ability to influence that department or team. It's very difficult to get a lot moving, to get people to start using it, unless they get pressure from either their boss or someone who's really a champion for this, who actually has influence on that department. I would recommend if you're starting from the ground up, if you have no one at your company who is really, understanding what Power BI does, to try to find either your CIO or someone who enjoys Power BI that's also in a leadership role. Kind of give them your explanation of what you want to do for the teams and departments. It's very difficult for this to be successful without that buy-in. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that and what that looks like. But I would say per department, you would want a champion who's someone of influence, a VP, a manager, someone higher up in that department who's going to be able to speak for you and speak to the things that you want to implement for that team, that can help you understand what the needs are, but also, again, can influence the team under them. The other person I would recommend kind of identifying is basically someone on operations. If you're dealing with sales, if you're dealing with marketing, product management, finance, you have your stakeholder, but you also have someone who's usually in the weeds, who's been developing reports for them, or been either using Power BI to export it to deliver an Excel sheet to the teams, or someone who very much understands the data and understands the process and understands kind of the ins and outs of that department. Those two people are going to be involved throughout this whole process. You may have more than one stakeholder or more than one champion on that team. That's fine. I would keep it to 4 at most, including the operations side of things. But basically, those are the people that are going to be involved in those scoping and discovery meetings. I've seen instances where we took a sales department and we actually did the scoping and discovery per sales region, because each sales region had different needs. So we did one for the North Americas, we did one for Canada, we did one for Europe, we did one for Africa, and we went through this whole process because of the structure of the teams and, again, given the need and where the needs were. So identifying who the stakeholder is and an operations specialist on each side. Once you do this scoping and discovering the needs and the expectations, again, it's writing out a project plan, and we'll go into the roadmap here right after that. And it's basically, here's what we're going to be accomplishing in the foreseeable future. This is what we're going to be working on. Here's our hurdles. And basically, here's what we need from you. Here's what you should expect from us. And nothing should be worked on until this is signed off by the stakeholders. Until you get an email confirmation or you actually print it out. Again, there's no printing anymore. PDF sign, DocuSign, doesn't matter. At this point, your freedom is absolutely fine with me on what you decide to do. But getting them, the goal is to get the stakeholders sign off like, yes, this is our expectations. This aligns perfectly what we need and what you guys can do. So this goes into the roadmap. So what they're signing off on is, one, what you're going to be accomplishing long term, what their hurdles and their concerns are, where there's barriers, and then they're also signing off on this roadmap. And this roadmap is really a kind of, again, looking at a 6-month period of things that, again, can be adapted, but you're basically saying, here's our short-term wins, here's the low-hanging fruit, the quick wins that we're going to do. And this is just an example. Like, we're going to establish some sandbox reporting that you guys can play in, that's going to have some of this new data that you can filter by the sales region and see the reps and that are included within it. We can deliver that as a sandbox, as a prototype. Great. In the next 30 days, we're going to have definitions for quota, for total sales, for components, you name it. We'll have a definition that anyone can reference. And we're going to roll out these KPIs in our future reports. And then having a 3-month look ahead. And again, at this point, it's getting a little more flexible because things can change, scoping can change, business objectives can change. You may run into something with the reporting that requires more time. The goal is to get out there that this is what they should be expecting in a 3-month period. It's like, we're rolling out the report, we're rolling out these gold reports, we're removing these 2 reports, and we'll be able to have this features and functionalities. And then a 6-month period of, basically, we're going to be doing, not that I would recommend doing predictive analytics within a 6-month period if you're just starting from scratch. But if you want, I'm not going to stop you. Again, as long as you can deliver. But having something where you can even look out a long-term period, where you can look out 6 months and say, this is where we want to be. and again, aligning teams with this, with an expectations, and what you again, what the goal is to have a centralized location so they can stop using Excel. That could be part of your roadmap, saying, hey, within 180 days, Excel will cease to exist in terms of your VBA macro
Hey,
that
be
connects
careful
to
there.
who knows what.
Be careful with trying to get rid of Excel. I know Alex, not about the cell is on here. He'll have another words to say about that.
I know. I'm not saying. Does Alex still use macros?
I think everyone who uses
VBA?
Excel also uses macros. I think it's like a given. You have to. It's a thing. So here, I'm going to transition here to a screen here. Hold on, hang on a second. See if we can transition to everyone here. Let's see if we got everyone. Tommy, you still there? Yeah.
I'm here.
Audio's off. Hold on. There you go. All right. So I want to talk about this part because I have Tommy. I think we feel the same pain on this one, where we have. Oh crap! Your video went super huge again. Why does it keep doing that? Pause. Michael's trying to. Why does this do this to me?
I got to go back to chicken. That's what you're telling me.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. Hold on a second.
It was pasta.
I don't know why this OBS thing keeps changing your window size. I guess it doesn't like you. Okay, trying again. Transitioning back to get to the view here. So I was the guy who was building on the macros. I was the Excel guru, and I loved building Excel like to the nth degree. Macros all over the place, colored formulas everywhere, and I buried a lot of business logic in that Excel file that only lived there. And I see you smiling because I know this is kind of like you've seen it. You've seen the stick around this.
Like with Excel, the stuff you can do with Excel. I had a reference an A2 and a C that it makes it completely change. And the freedom's there. And there were other programs like I used Google Sheets at one point to do predictive stuff because they had it and using that at one point. There's a lot of different platforms out there, and getting people to change habits. Because again, why would they keep using Excel? Why would be hesitant to start using Power BI and Excel? Because they can trust Excel when they know how to navigate it and they're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
so I was going to say another kind of key point around that thing. I think there's a very neat aspect of just that whole moving away from what you've been traditionally doing in Excel. I think there's definitely a place for it. Like definitely in finance, they're going to need to have it. There's some other key pieces here that are also very much important around having Excel around. So I'm not saying we get rid of it, but I'm saying some of the business processes need to change. And for me, Power Query was a game changer. As soon as Power Query showed up, I was like in love with how much that has saved me from a timing standpoint and how much more I could automate across everything. So that one is a huge improvement for me. So I really loved the whole Power Query element and how that enhances the whole experience around just working with data and BI.
And I think there's two things there that I kind of want to harp on. Is one, so the first one, remind me in case I forget, but it's basically a centralized location. Remember that because I'm going to forget that. But going back to Excel, we had a case where we were doing a predictive customer lead scoring, but this was before data flows and kind of, when Power BI just got out, and we basically had because of how much the Power Query, the Power Query was consuming what we were doing. We had 5 Excel sheets that each had their own Power Query that was connecting to each sheet because one had to be static because you couldn't do it all in just one sheet. And it would basically connect to it. You would save it, then open the other one that would connect to that static table that was loaded in, and you had to do this whole process. And now, it's amazing where we've come with that. So, but the other thing, it's not so much that Excel is the problem. Alex, Excel's not the problem. The problem the problem is the centralized location. Like, who's owning that? If your team's owning it and you can validate that data, great. But again, are there scopes in place? Are there processes in place where people can't manipulate, like how easy is in Excel to manipulate it in a way that is going to show a different data point or a different number, or different KPI. So the point is not Excel. It could be Google Sheets. It could even be Power BI. If you had someone just out of college, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's using Power BI, but they're not they don't have a process, and you can't validate their numbers. And so it has nothing to do with Excel. But that's usually the case because Excel's been there and it's been owned by a guy who's been
Yep.
there for 20 years. Or, that, and again, that everyone's comfortable with is who's owning it, because if something changes. I mean, how often do we create a report? And this goes back to data, data modeling. And we were going to talk about this during the Chicago World Tour that got canceled, but I'm not going to harp because I'm already depressed enough about that. But
soon, Tommy, we'll get back together soon. We'll get the gang together. We'll get the band back, and we'll be able to all play around Power BI again. Hopefully, at some point.
I know. I mean, I'm in a brown basement with a brown ceiling. We try to take off the ceiling here. That did not work out. So
welcome to your new office.
Yeah, exactly. But the point around, if something changes in the business, like, hey, by the way, this we're no longer including this medium, or this product's no longer available, it's now caught. So how do you go back and change that in the reports? But does that person who's owning Excel, do they know that change? What's the change management around that? So it's controlling the ability, again, controlling the numbers in a way that it can be universal. And that if you do have, go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, you guys are making some great points, and we're covering a lot of ground. I think one thing you bring up, though, is that I do appreciate in Power BI is, despite the fact that we can get ourselves into some challenges around like where data comes from, there is some fantastic discoverability in Power BI, right? Like it is really simple to like track things through and how, where am I getting data? How am I transforming it? What is it looking like? And those, especially with some of the third-party tooling, right? On top of that, that process is much like better versus, the hidden complexity of Excel. Like the guy coming from, enterprise and data land, where SQL Server and databases is where I came from. Like essentially when I need Excel, I use Mike. like that's the extent of it. But in some of the previous contracting things I've done, like not being a heavy Excel guy and digging into like trying to figure out where things are at, that is a black hole of fun.
You don't want to do
that way. So no.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing on this whole idea is have you seen experiences? I want to ask, like, what is the normal experience that you see at a company? Is it A, B, or C? A, there's an internal BI team. B, there's a guy named Joe who does it. Or C, each team has like a BI specialist or a business analyst.
I want to hang on the term. So, what is a BI specialist? Because I would argue there's multiple people that fit that role. I think there are two people that are key to talk about. There's the guy who does the modeling, and there's the guy who does the report building. There's kind of two people I think here.
Yeah.
So and I think if you're in the Excel land, you're a guy who's kind of modeler based. He understands tables and relationships and how tables should get together. They may not be full DAX capable right away, but if you're one of those, if you're writing macros inside Excel, for sure, you're like a BI modeler. You should be learning these newer tools to kind of really up your game and solidify your position for the next couple of years. So I think I would prefer, like if I had to say something, a lot of people are fitting, I think, that role B, like Joe's the guy, right? We have a person on our team who knows what they're doing with data and Excel and things there. And when the business is challenged to get something done quickly, we lean on Joe to get something done or execute quickly.
Right.
I think in large organizations where there's bigger budgets and more plan around this, there are enterprise projects that have a whole enterprise team around BI and are trying to push and develop that. But usually those are growing out of what Joe has kind of started or built, and it's gotten to the point where it needs help maintaining it, and we need to really transition it into something that's larger. Right now we're talking purchasing P SKUs or more capacity in Azure. So when things get bigger, that's when IT wants to step in and say, okay, I'm here now, let me productionalize this, make sure it's secure and safe. And then you start trying to transition to these larger BI teams.
So I'm going to weigh in here because I think my feeling resonates. I think this is similar veins with Mike, but I think what we've been pushing for, and Mike, you wrote like a blog and video around this too, I think, which is think like the business, act like IT, right? So essentially, to answer your question in a different way, I think every organization has the team that is the enterprise reporting team, right? Where they're very focused on the large model, or building a standardized set, whether that's a data warehouse or the singular model that supports all the different business areas, and typically those teams run at a slower cadence because those are from the dev side, right? In IT. The other point is the second group that you asked about. Do they run? Do people run always in their own groups with reporting? Absolutely. It's just that the first team doesn't know about it, because they're the ones trying to lock everything down into like not having this challenge of like, where's data coming from? Where do we, what do we do with it, et cetera. So the business is always out in front of typically like that standardized approach of doing things slower, whatnot. Now, what's extremely exciting is I think we're hitting an inflection point, not only with technologies like Power BI, but all of the latest things that are coming out within the a short time span here, that is enabling both of those teams within an organization to really come together. And like this presentation that you're giving is a great roadmap and like outline of whether it's a brand new implementation and you're trying to sell the analytics in a company and Power BI, or it's part of how this fits differently than other analytics tools, because I think there is this relationship that can happen if you start to pull in the key teams and create what I think you termed as like the third way, where you want your subject matter experts in the business areas to be the people that are also Power BI experts. I want to leverage those as the report author guy who's like creating standardization and main data sources and where I put things to help facilitate all of those people in the organization. And that's where I think there's an immense power of like the analytics within an org and the ability to really glean really deep insights across the org. And that's like the game changing, really exciting thing for me. So I think like you always have one, they don't know what to doing. And, I think the push here is to develop three, right? And how do you really, open up all the different levels of ad hoc reporting, as well as create clear paths for standardization on using, solid data sources, so that you do have that trust within the org.
I wish I could have worked in IT in the 90s and just tell everyone, you get it when I tell you can get it.
So true.
There's nothing you can do. No, I think Seth, that's a perfect point where a lot of times you find, there's a BI team, and then you actually start going into the weeds of a team. It's like, oh no, Joe's been doing this, all these other reports, and no one has any idea that's what that actual team's been using. They don't use anything that's actually coming from the IT or from the enterprise side. They're just using what Joe does, because Joe always delivers it, and Joe's right next to them, but no one knows it. But that's what they're making decisions off of.
But but ultimately, right? That is exactly why we have extremely complex solutions in Excel. That's why Access databases live in thousands in organizations, because people they need to be enabled in such a way that they can return the information that their bosses want. That they need data. They need this thing. They go build it.
No, and that's kind of a perfect part that I will harp on in terms of what happens when you do find the Joes and the people on the different teams.
Pay them more money.
Doing it, and how do you?
Don't let them leave, because if they leave, you're screwed.
I know, and that's what happens. But how do you actually rein them in? So I'll get back to the slides for now, because I do have something kind of on that.
Let me transition back over to your slides here real quick. Transition back over. I think we're still good. All right, Tommy, keep going, bud.
All right, so let's kind of continue. So we talked about this project plan, and one of the things, if part of this project plan, and I'll talk about it now, is for those who let's say you're the single BI guy, and I don't think this is the case anymore, but I used to say this: if there is no BI guy or BI admin at the company, be that person, because that is a skill that is so needed and becoming so understood at companies that we need someone to manage this and organize this. So if there's
I worked with some really
Yeah,
good BI
guy or
gals
gal.
that have been amazing, or they've done an incredible job. Stuff, it's just phenomenal. So like, I mean, but I would agree with you 100%. Stick
Yeah,
to that BI role. The data is not. There's no less data tomorrow than there is today. If anything, you're going to have more data to handle tomorrow and the future.
Exactly. And I think developing that skill is going to
Yeah.
be, for your own career and just for your organization is going to deliver success. So let's say you are that person and you know that every team has a person, they do their own thing. If you get the buy-in, again, if you get the buy-in from up top or the leadership that has the ability over the departments, one of the things that I've seen implemented, or we actually implemented, was, okay, we're not going to have a BI team. These people are always going to be on finance or operations, et cetera. They're going to be building reports. But using Power BI, the Power BI admin settings, basically they have to go to a monthly meeting to basically say, here's our process, and if you don't follow it, you're going to lose access. Not that you phrase it that way. It's not like you have a nice limit to kind of keep that standardization, but we'll get to that. So we just talked about this project plan, this roadmap, and this is actually what me and Mike were going to kind of give that Chicago User Group World Tour conversation is. And this is, I think, I don't see this happen enough. I don't hear about this enough. And I feel this is another, again, one of those gaps in the power of Power BI. When you're developing a report, and this is not just in this roadmap, but I think in general, if there's one takeaway, is basically creating a two-phase approach. And I think actually Paul Turley talked about this. Like he does reports in a two-phase project or two project phase. Whereas basically phase one is our sandbox. We're playing in a sandbox. We're going to give you access to this report in a development workspace. It's going to say development on it that only the stakeholders can have. And it's basically we're throwing things at a wall. The goal of the first few weeks is really to understand what they want to, what a team wants to look at, the features and functionalities that you can do, and then what are some of the KPIs and what's the flow to kind of understand that, and allowing even in meetings to do real-time dragging and dropping, not to give away our secret of how easy it is to create a bar chart in Power BI, but to actually say, like, it would be great if we actually saw, all the products from the year over year. You mean like this? And you actually show them to get a lot of them to get inspired and say, well, if you could do that, it would be great for my team if they could see my rep, their managers for each product, if they had a view into that. Great, we can do that. So that comes part of the project plan. But you're making Power BI a sandbox, a literal sandbox to play in the beginning. It's the numbers. You tell them these numbers you cannot report on. They are going to be, this report's going to be changing rapidly. The labels, the names we're going to be working on, but it's literally we're playing in this for the next 2 to 4 weeks until then we actually go into our blueprint phase. But that prototyping phase is essential because I think I struggled with this, and I can still struggle with this, where you're developing a report and you go, and the worst thought I can have is, it'd be great. You could do a drill through into that drill. And then you start going to like all the features and you start getting very technical with the report. Someone sees it like, I don't need any of this. I only need what's on the top left. I just need to see if we're doing better than last year. That's the only thing that's important to them. You're like, that's the only thing that's important. 20 hours. I just spent 20 hours building all this other, neat things. You can actually see, the sales rep percentage compared to per product. It's like, well, that's not important to the business. So having that prototype phase, one, saves you time, and two, allows the users to actually say, what are the business cases for this report that's going to help them make their decisions. And then it goes into that now you have a blueprint. Now you're actually in the development. You're validating the data. You're making sure the names are right. Whether you use data flows or, how your dimensions are, like, okay, do we call it a sales region or do we call it an account region? Are they sales companies, account companies? Where are we getting the right, billing country? Or are we using the customer country? Where are all these things coming from? And then you basically go through a final Q&A. The report will go from development to a production workspace, and you basically say, once you sign off, we're gonna kick off what we call the rollout process. And the rollout process is who's going to get access. And those same people would be part of a roadshow. Here's where the report's going to live. It will be a refresh on this time, and then basically the stakeholders sign off. You schedule the roadshow and do the training and education, walk through again what the BI team's up to, what the report shows, and then allowing them like, hey, if your company has a help desk, make sure that you guys have the BI team as a category. If you need one-on-one training, if something's not right, if we need an update to the report, here's where you can go to get support for this report, and allowing people to know where that content is. And again, that's kind of part of you can do that. The really 3 through 5 there can be per report, per major report. And the idea is you do this, especially when you're starting fresh, you kind of build this foundation. You build a foundational report that will be kind of based off, you're really for the first time establishing some of those universal metrics or universal KPIs. You're establishing the hierarchy of dimensions or fields that are business understood. So that's kind of a really good, this is really a solid roadmap that you can do per department. And again, this could be per report or per department. So we've talked a lot about the teams. Now, again, let's start to look a little inward. We're going to look at ourselves, and we're going to see, are we doing a good job at our role? So there's a few projects you can do in parallel with this. Again, we've talked a lot about the report development, but there's a lot of things that are going to, sway the success of those reports. And one of those is, or a few of those are basically some governance projects. And I would say one of the things is how often do different departments have a different lexicon or a different definition? If marketing says lead and sales says lead, is it the same thing? You've seen a lot of cases where a lead to marketing is anyone who fills out a form. A lead to sales is someone who actually calls or they have a conversation with. Those are very big definitions or differences in definitions. So beginning to understand what are the definitions across the company, and establishing what you basically call a data champions team. This is a stakeholder per team that, again, is in a leadership role that gets together and makes sure it hashes out what are the definitions. Hey, when I say product, I actually mean when you can buy something online, not the actual widget. When I say a customer, I'm actually talking about someone who purchases, not our B2B side. And beginning to understand that a universal way of saying things, that data champions team is responsible for then saying, here's the new lingo. The BI would be involved with this. We're basically going through and actually creating, you can use a Power App, and is basically creating a lexicon, a definition that anyone can go to say, hey, this report is showing me, total quantity purchase. What's a quantity? Have a question mark on the top right of the report. They can click on it and say, okay, a quantity, or another page in the report. Okay, quantity means this. Okay, we're looking at regions. Okay, we're not talking about sales regions. We're talking about, let's say the system and change regions, or where our production regions are. Understanding of the context of a report and the context of the definitions. Again, it's going to be very hard to see success, even if you do the prototyping, when different people are looking at a report and trying to understand what they're looking at. And again, so that's data champions team kind of equals or is adding on to a lexicon. And then there's the deployment in the process is, per report, does someone Slack you or Microsoft Teams you say, hey, what are you doing? Work on a report. Great. Can you work on a report for me? And it's someone that, may not be in a leadership role or a management role who should be asking you, what is the process to request a new report? And then how does that process kind of roll out? One of the things that we found successful is any report has to live in the help desk, our help desk. Nothing will be worked on unless it lives on the help desk. And that's very important for one, the documentation, say, hey, these are the things we're working on. Now we know how much is on our workload. And two, here, all the tickets, the communication lives in the help desk. One, because you can say, we said we were going to roll this out, within 3 weeks. We're on week 2. And also understanding that two, if someone who again is not in a leadership role is asking for, hey, I heard about this thing called machine learning. Can you implement that in the report? It's really important. You're like, well, okay. That's usually our answer. Like, I'll see what I can do. And then, but actually saying, okay, is this important business value? So who approves the reports and who approves the projects that you're going to work on? Then it goes to, again, part of that too is if you're dealing with universal KPIs, they have to get validated by your team. If another team is working on a report that would contain one of those universal KPIs, your team has to validate that. One of the questions you can get from here is how do you get that governance side of it in terms of why would that team go to you to validate it when they've been doing things their own? So I'm going to focus on this just a little, but the Power BI admin side of the tenant settings is a really powerful tool and can be utilized in this way, where especially if you have Power BI Premium, or if you have the ability to have security groups, where again, if you are the sole BI guy or you have an internal team, getting the CIO or someone in a leadership position, giving them this plan, like, look, we need to manage the content in Power BI. This is our way. Basically, creating what you call gold workspaces, where the only place Power BI reports can live, production-wise, are in these gold workspaces. No one else can create a workspace. You can have that ability to do so. If you have premium, the only premium workspaces are the ones that you establish. The only people who can publish them are, again, those different teams. So you can see the content that's living there. You can see what they're putting out. And if they're not following the processes or the KPIs are wrong because they didn't get to you, you can remove that report, remove their access because you are the Power BI admin. And if you have that ability, or if you know this the leadership role and can get that ability, I would recommend that in parallel with a lot of these things. That's one of the things you make a priority.
Tommy, question around that: Have you played
Yeah.
with the Power BI? Is it deployment pipelines at all?
I played around with it.
That area is supposed to kind of help
yeah.
users, and again, I haven't played with it enough to have a really strong opinion one way or the other, other than I've made a pipeline or two, I've moved an object or two
Yeah.
through it. I really like the idea of this, and if you haven't seen these, I'll see if I can go find the link and drop it in the chat window. But a deployment pipeline does just this thing. You set up a development workspace, and then you can push materials, either data sets, reports, or dashboards. You can push them through different environments, and you can see what updated or changed based on your updates. So you can have a dev, a staging area, and a production area.
Right. So no, I have seen it. I've played around a little, but I haven't actually done a use case scenario. And again, that's, to me right now, it's one of those theories, but I haven't actually seen a real in place what that could actually look like. But I think that's something that, that it's not rolled out globally yet, but that kind of would solve a lot of this too, where you would actually get people to validate it. Right now, the process that we have is actually you have to send the report to us, or it's in the development workspace, but it doesn't get pushed out. To be honest, I've always been a little weary of like the template apps and those apps kind of thing, because I feel like right now some stuff can get lost in the process. But I think that's a very good idea. That's my personal opinion, though. So.
Yeah, I think too, and this would be a good point to discuss in our kind of like after meeting as well, to see what kind of people have have played around with those. But I think in our experience, one of the deficiencies that we ran into was we had a use case where I want to keep the production data source and have versions of the report, and I think we had issues with traversing those reports in the multiple different staging things, didn't we, Mike, or something? Like, or I forget what the combination was, but there wasn't like an either or, right? Like, I want a singular production data source and just versions of my reports to come through the pipeline, or it was verse, I want to have different data sources, and I think it was not that one, but it was the other. But the theory is really good. I haven't played enough with them, and I'd love to hear if anybody has some more experience around that in our meeting that we're going to be.
Melissa Coates does a really good job of kind of explaining this at like different levels of organizations, from small up to bigger organizations, and it's really good, and it's definitely worth a read, because she definitely goes into like, if you're a small team, 2 or 3 people, there's definitely a different cadence on how you need to iterate through reports versus when you're a 3 or 4 or 5-person team. And then when you go to large enterprise teams, you need even more control. So there's like different stages that you need to kind of address and handle to really meet the needs of the team. So I really think there's kind of like what is the size of your team? What's the approach? Because as you get to a larger team, you really do want like a DevOps capability of being able to push reports in, pull reports out, make changes, publish them, and then keep them in a repository so you can have them all together. So the tooling is getting better. It's not quite there yet, I think, but I think deployment pipelines is a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think you both harped on a really good point I personally feel the deployment pipelines, the ALM toolkit, they're all understanding the template apps. They're all touching on a point, but I don't think anything's quite got there yet in terms of I think what's actually going to be utilized on a universal scale. And I think,
so I'm going to caveat in there because I would say. Go check out our ALM toolkit video.
Yeah.
Like some of those third-party tools, like those are going to be foundational pieces of my architecture, especially with large data models and things like that. I don't know. I had a hang up there. I had to point it out.
It's good.
No. And I've used it. I actually at the Charlotte World Tour, back in 2018 or 2017. I don't remember his name, but he was from Charlotte, and he actually built me the executable in the GitHub. And that was like 2018, the ALM toolkit, because I'm like, I need this in my life. I need this. And that was but like the ALM toolkit's good for the individual reports, unless, like I said, but again, I'm thinking of like the idea of this whole deployment, not just the change management side is phenomenal. And if you guys have not seen the video that Seth and Mike did about the ALM toolkit, absolutely check it out.
Description.
But from the kind of the rollout and the validation of a metric and the number, it's because it's not app development. It's I think we're doing a lot trying to do that. There's a lot of similarities with that, but what is that? What is it? What would a user interface look like to validate a report, the numbers, to roll it out in an easier way? And I personally don't know if there's anything out there like that yet. And I think everything is like at the cusp of it, but there's nothing that's actually hit the nail on the head in terms of what I want to see. You guys developed the report team. You guys could do this.
Yeah, you're talking. So you're talking more of the kind of like the admin reporting, right? Holistically, what's going? Yeah. So Parker Stevens, who also does a bunch of YouTube videos, and I haven't gotten around, but I think he did just completed like 2 or 3 of actually, how do you build administrative reporting? So go check that out, because I know I am, because you hit the nail on the head. Like there is nothing there yet that is a holistic view into like what is going on within the organization, which is going to help me drive a ton of what actions I would need to take, or what things does the organization need, right? Do we need more sharing and deployment discussion? Are people having challenges around a certain particular area? Or like in chat, are a bunch of people creating stuff in their workspaces and sharing it? Stuff like that you can get out ahead of when you have that type of oversight and view into things. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with, or, like you said, if somebody in the community comes up with the magic report.
I will say this.
Unless PowerShell.
True. Well, we've got a couple things out on PowerShell as well for like switching data connections inside reports from Power BI.Tips. But another one I'll point out is Purple Frog Design Systems, Alex over in Europe, has a solution, BI Sentinel, which is another Power BI Sentinel tool. So the idea is, with APIs, they go into the Power BI service and grab a bunch of data that you have and shove it into a storage system that you can then have access to. So it's actually using and leveraging the API system to help out with a lot of that. Yeah. So that's another tool that's kind of slick and that's out there as well, which I'd also would highly recommend additionally, because that's another great tool that's out there. And Tommy, you just got rid of your picture. I'm so sorry. This Skype window for your window, I don't know what it's doing. It like decides that in some cases it wants to resize you, and then other cases it does not. So I'm gonna see if I can fix it again.
This is what happens when I do DoorDash one too many times. I'm telling you.
I will say, despite that though, what has been fantastic to see is, big shout out to Kai on the Power BI team, who's pushed a lot of the admin APIs that even give us the visibility into things that we have, right? So within the last year, the ability to use Postman and even jerry rig and ad hoc some generation of like what's going on in my environment. Like I can't tell you how many times I've done that. Like I haven't made the automation yet, but
huge.
That is bar none a huge improvement, to where we were.
Well, and one of the things that we rolled up is, because not everyone should have access to be a Office 365 admin to be able to do the auto log, which, contrary to popular belief, but they rolled out, so if you're a Power BI admin, you can actually use PowerShell and actually grab the usage data.
Yeah.
So after 20 hours or 20 days, I don't remember, I'm trying to create a loop, because you can only pull once a day.
Once a day, yeah.
So, but I created something that pulls a CSV file into a folder so we can actually see all the usage and also what people are doing. But that to me was a
Miguel Escobar down in Panama. He's got a thing. I got to find the link for his. He's got another thing doing the exact same thing, and he's hacked mQuery, so he allows him to query multiple, like use one day at a time, but he can then query multiple days to kind of stitch together a story for you.
Yeah.
And then you can combine that, because it's an M, you combine that with data flows, and now you can start setting up an incremental refresh on top of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I need to see that. I have not seen that yet.
I'll see if I can go find the link for him. He's got some good stuff around it.
Okay. You got a lot.
I'm literally slamming links into the description here. We're talking about topics so fast. I'm trying to get them out.
Oh, this is great. Oh no, I think all those things is, there are a lot of things out there. Maybe I need to develop. I don't know, but I'm saying like where can I view kind of like the Sentinel? But I don't know. Does Sentinel, can you act in it now?
So there's some things you can do. So what it does is it goes
can.
through your environment, and I think it'll actually go through and download every single Power BI. It'll download every single Power BI file, store it somewhere, and it'll then rip through the files themselves individually and kind of tell you like all the things that are inside the models and others. You got to check it out. I have done a little bit of cursory looking at it. It looks pretty impressive, and there's just a lot of information. So
you should do a webinar on that, Mike.
Add him to my list.
See if they give us free access. Yeah.
There you go.
We get some access. So we want to do an hour.
We'll throw that down your way, Tom.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Yeah. I'll get the questions ready. So, perfect. So all right. So let's kind of continue. Then we're near the tail end. Then we'll get to the I can get a drink too. I see, Seth, you have one. So I'm drinking water right now. So
we're gonna get to happy hour here.
It is a Milwaukee group. Yeah. Exactly. Happy hour. Is that what's called, happy hour? Okay. We're gonna get off topic. Okay. So let's get back to the slides. All right, so we talked about some governance projects, and again, so this internal team governance too. So not just from the technical side is, making sure there's a process for everything. I really hope everyone has a template and a color theme that's used. If one report has a title with a red background, that or at least the color theme of your company or your client, whoever it is. Every report in that sphere should kind of follow that same format. Again, think about the users. Think about if you had one report that he had to scroll 3 pages, and one was the filters were on the right hand side, the others on the left. To us, it's easy because again, we work in this. This is our everyday. But imagine if we had to go into Salesforce and every page of Salesforce was different, and that's not what we do every day. We would be overwhelmed. We would feel like our dads and go, I don't know how this works, and try to figure out, okay, where are the filters, because that's not our everyday. And then again, the workspace, this is one thing I really hope everyone takes away too, is organize your content. Understand where the content lives, what content is validated, what the purpose of each content is. You can look at a report and say, oh, well, this is for this product line and it serves this purpose. And being able to easily identify that. Because if you can't identify it, I guarantee you consumers can't. So the final part of this adoption is we talked about governance, we've talked about roadmaps, discovery, aligning expectations, and now again, one of the major parts of this, but again, equally if not the most important at the end of the day, is allowing the news to roll out. Again, we've done all this stuff internally. You've met with the teams individually, the stakeholders, but now from a company-wide point of view, is promote your team, promote who does report authoring, so people can understand, kind of establishing a department. Usually the BI team is kind of looked like, oh, are you guys IT? Are you guys just data? I'm not sure, but promoting the BI team, who those people are. For one, people can go to you, say, I have a question. How do you do this? Or, can you do this? So promoting the BI team as an entity at the company. Establishing what you call a center of excellence. You can use SharePoint. You can use a Power App. Again, at this point, the freedom is up to you. But a center of resources where those webinars live, those road shows live. One thing we establish is we do on the first Friday of the month, we call it the Power BI Power Hour. And it's an hour anyone can join that it goes through new updates to the BI team, new updates to reports, highlight a report or showcase a report, and any questions people have. Again, this is not, people are not excited about Power BI as we are, but you will get people who are going to join or watch the webinar because you are, again, putting the word out there of what, allowing people to not necessarily reach out, but allowing them to see the content to consume, to educate themselves. Also allowing the support and a ticket system. We've talked about that, and allowing the lexicon dictionary. Again, so the final hat that I'm going to give you guys is you're going to become a marketing manager yourselves. When you roll out a report, when there's new changes and updates to Power BI, like when Microsoft says, hey, we're going to change the entire interface of the service to now. And you have to figure out now it's changed for everyone, or like, hey, we added filters now, so they're updated. What do you have a communication plan? Do you use a Slack channel? Do you have an email? Does the BI team have an email that they use? Is there a way for people to see what updates are happening? If something happens where the SQL connection broke and people now, all the reports are now broken, or they're just not updating, is there a central location people can go to see where the latest news is of new reports and communication? Finally, and we kind of talked about this, is at the end of the day, we measure everything. So why don't we measure our own success and how we're doing? So I would say there's the quantitative and qualitative way. Usage reports, again, Mike, if you can find that blog that talks about using PowerShell for the Power BI admin, is seeing what are people using and who's using it. One of the things that we developed is a 2-week rolling to say what reports are relevant in the last 2 weeks compared to the previous 2 weeks, and how many views and how many users. So this is a twofold accomplishment in terms of, one, it allows you to focus on reports and content that are most important. So these are the more delicate reports. If it breaks, if you make a change to it, like let's say you change a page or delete a name, if this is one of your most widely used reports, it's going to affect a lot of people. Two, it allows you to see if someone's requesting a lot of content and they never look at reports, and I guarantee you there's someone at your company who does that. It allows you to give pushback, because it's that one person, maybe it's another Joe out there who's asking for everything and is in a leadership role, but they never look at it. They look at it once or twice. You spent 30 hours on these reports, but they're not being looked at by anyone. It allows you to say, hey, we noticed you have these 3 reports. We haven't seen any views on them. Either we're going to deprecate them because maybe storage space, or you go to their leadership, their manager, to say, we can't keep doing these reports that no one are looking at. But allowing you to see what are the content that people's looking at. A part of this too, and this goes back to finally wrapping up the cyclical nature of the discovery and feedback, is getting people's feedback, not just the usage, but understand, like doing a quarterly survey per report or per team that goes to how often are you using Power BI? Do you use bookmarks? Do you use search? We were so proud at one point when we rolled out bookmarks to reports and the drill through, because we developed it and everything, but nobody was using it because, one, either it went to, we had like a description part, was it too overwhelming, or was it just not important to them? Was it a feature that was not going to be widely used? That allows you to work on things that are important. It allows you to focus on the things that the business needs to focus on. It allows you to change and alter alter our own actions. That if we're on a certain course with report development, with the content we're delivering, but it's not what the company needs, it's not providing business value, that now we can change. And so the usage, the feedback surveys, these report surveys, goes back to this recurring scoping and the cyclical nature that kind of builds up the maturity. So that's really all I have today. And apparently my battery's running low, even though it's plugged in. That's okay. We'll figure that one out. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Hopefully all the video hangs on here. So go ahead and do it. And we'll see what happens. I'll try and transition away from that. So Tommy, thank you very much for sharing stuff. I really appreciate it. This kind of completes the normal YouTube live stream thing that we're doing now with the Power BI user group from Milwaukee. We're going to transition away from this meeting, and we're going to add another meeting link. We'll put it in the invite here in the chat window. We're going to be hanging out for about like another 40 or so minutes. Myself, Seth, and Tommy are all MVPs, and so we call this hour kind of like Stump the Chump, or come with us to the bar and go grab a beer and hang out with us, or drink your favorite beverage and come drink with us, and we'll just kind of hang out and we'll just kind of chill here for a moment while we just relax and talk more about Power BI stuff. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I really appreciate it. And let me see if I can. Oh, there's Tommy's window. It's back now. Okay. So Skype, man, this new thing, man, Skype freaks me out. I'm having, so also for those of you who've joined us a couple times, we've been doing a lot of traditional Teams meetings. We're trying to transition to this new platform using OBS, Open Broadcast Software, and doing fun things where we can have lots more video and media in front of us. But in doing so, it's a little bit glitchy here to begin with. Michael hasn't worked out all the kinks yet. I'm not quite an Adam Saxton, so forgive me there. I'll maybe get there. Bear with me. But we will try to keep making good quality content and getting experts to come talk to you guys about just fun Power BI things. So stay tuned. The link for the next meeting will be in the description here. Seth, if you wouldn't mind hopping off and zooming over to that meeting, I would appreciate it. And then with that, guys, Tommy, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Seth, thanks for getting in here as soon as I figured out how to work technology eventually. Thank you very much, and we'll see you guys next month. Thanks, guys.